Hello, Naomi from the pack here, just welcoming you to this month's latest episode of the Pet Sat Together podcast. Now, this time around, I got to sit and have a fantastic chat with the wonderful Beck Maher of Inside Minds. I love Becki to pieces, and actually, Becki has been an absolute anchor for me on the speakers circuit. She's well seasoned, I'm quite new to it, and it always makes me feel quite calm when I get to sit on a panel with Becki. So it was wonderful to have this really frank, easygoing, relaxed conversation around the client journey. I really hope you enjoy what we've put together. What I do ask is, in order for us to put this content together for free, I ask you, please share this content with your peers, with your colleagues, and make sure to subscribe. Hi, Becki.
Hi, Naomi.
It's good. It's so good to have you back. The last time you were on, we had a session with Liv, and we did. Was it around emotional intelligence for the clinical staff within the veterinary teams that we work with? And there we touched briefly on elements such as the psychology of marketing and ways in which you can kind of bridge the gap between client and team, but we didn't really get to kind of get our teeth into it much. So it's great to have you back to discuss some of the elements that we've got planned for today.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Absolute pleasure. It's been wonderful as well seeing your face pop up all over the place in this past year. It was wonderful seeing you at Spivs and being alongside you on the panel. So yeah, a joy for me to be able to work with you again.
Likewise. Thanks, Naomi.
And so your career path, I mean, if we look at it very briefly, it could seem quite a big jump and quite random, and in the words of Ebony, a bit squiggly. But actually, when you describe it, it makes huge sense because you've come from a clinical background.
Yep.
You're working now more from a marketing perspective, but you're still working in clinic and with veterinary teams. Can you tell me a little bit about the work that Inside Minds does and how you've got from where you were in your clinical profession to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So I started off in small animal practice, working as a vet, and moved into industry relatively early on in my career because I sort of felt like I wanted a bit more variation in my day-to-day life, and really loved being in industry. Did lots of different roles: marketing, technical, trained as a marketeer. And while I was in industry, I was lucky enough to be supported through a behavioural science degree. And that's the point really at which I had a light bulb moment, understanding consumer psychology, understanding how our brains tick. And I really felt like if I'd known more about that when I'd been in practice, it would have completely changed things for me and hopefully for clients and teams around me as well. And that's where I really felt like I wanted to use the new knowledge I had to make a difference in the veterinary space, in veterinary clinics themselves. So I set up Inside Minds about 2.5 years ago now. And we work to help practices with a variety of different things. But I guess if we had to sort of put it into buckets, it would be marketing communications. So helping them with creating brand stories, content creation, and then also team training, so communication skills training. And I guess in that marketing bucket as well, so I should have said it's very relevant to this conversation, client journey mapping and sort of understanding client experience. And a lot of the team training that we do is built around like the client experience. Like, how do we make that better for them? How do we improve clinical outcomes by dialing up the client experience, basically?
Yeah, it makes sense. We've actually had a huge amount of positive feedback. I think especially on the work that you've done specifically, especially with the team at Thrums, the work that you did around the wellness plans. Gavin was just the stuff that he was saying. He's really into that. He's really into kind of digging deep and seeing like where can we push that extra element to get that little extra connection between the team and the client. Could you explain to me what you mean when we talk about things like the client journey? What exactly are you referring to, and what does that look like when it comes to the work that you do with the teams that you work with?
Sure. So, the client journey basically encompasses literally everything, like every single touch point that the client comes into contact with. So everything from the online reviews that they read, the website that they interact with, the phone call that they make to book an appointment, the online booking that they might go through, the car park, the waiting room, like literally every single step along the way. And the reason why I look holistically at the whole journey, not just what's going on inside the consult room. Obviously, what goes on inside the consult room is important, but we tend to focus really heavily on that and forget about some of the other touch points which really do impact on how the client feels, therefore what decisions they make in the consult room, and how satisfied they are as they walk away. So paying attention to each step in the journey, whether that be, you know, the moment where they open the door and walk into the waiting room, or whether that be the moment they leave the consulting room and go to the desk and pay and walk out into the car park. All of those touch points, online and in person, have a huge impact on the decisions that clients make.
Yeah. In your experience, what is there any specific element that you regularly see being overlooked?
I think one of the biggest gaps that I see is a focus on the emotions, on what a client is feeling at various points. So I see a lot of clinics working really hard to have great processes in place, you know, really particularly around the clinical elements, you know, the actual consult room experience and the clinical decisions that are being made and the advice that's being given within the consult. But often people forget to think about how people might feel, say, as they walk through that door into the waiting room, as they're having that conversation with the reception team, as they're sitting in the waiting room waiting. There's a huge amount of feeling that's created just through what those touch points feel like, look like, smell like, that will have a huge impact on the decisions they'll make once they're stood in front of the vet or the nurse in the consult room. And I think paying attention to small things which can change feelings is really important. So to make that sort of, bring it to life, make it a bit more practical, you know, thinking about how I would feel as a client if I drive into the car park and there's weeds and rubbish everywhere. You know, I might not consciously think, crikey, this car park's a mess, but there'll be some subconscious, you know, thoughts and feelings that are going on about, not sure about this place. And similarly, if I walk into the waiting area and it stinks, or it's really loud, or the person on reception doesn't look up and greet me, all of those things add up and start to stack up and create a feeling. And if we only focus on what's going on inside the consult room, then we miss like probably about 90% of the stuff that stacks up to create that feeling. And when clients are thinking about their experience, or when they're reflecting on how was that once they get home, the bit that we focus on a lot as clinicians, the bit inside the consult room, actually is only a tiny part of it, because everything that they experience end to end all stacks up, and they see it holistically. You know, they see every touch point as part of that. They all feed into that feeling. So I think the biggest thing that I try and encourage clinics to do more of is to look at the whole end-to-end experience, not just little bits of it. Obviously you can focus on bits to tweak them, but ultimately the whole end-to-end experience is important. But also to focus on like emotions. How will someone feel when they experience this? That's so key.
And it's a tough one, isn't it? Because the entire process is emotively led on both sides. So there's a huge amount of emotion that's being felt by both the clinical team, by the team that are working to support the clinical team, and then also the clients, and then also the animals. You know, so exactly. There's a huge layer of emotion in there. I remember last year my mum's clinic had a big refurb. And when me and my brother were over visiting her, my brother was asking, like, what does the clinic look like now? And she said, oh yeah, it's wonderful. They've got like a treat station for the animals. There's lots of space. It looks really, really beautiful. But after my consultation, I went to pay and they answered the phone. She said, do you not think that that's so rude? And they made me wait. And she was quite she was quite upset about it because she felt like they'd put all this effort into making it look sparkly, but then she felt that they fell short on their attitude.
Yeah.
My brother kind of gasped and said to her, "Oh no, you do realise that could have been an emergency, and that's why they always answer the phone. It's not that they didn't think that you were important." And it kind of sparked something in my mum's brain because she just never realised that that was even a thing.
Yeah.
And I went with her to the vets a couple of weeks ago, and the same thing happened. She went to the consultation, then she went to pay, and the phone rang, and the lady in front of her rolled her eyes, and my mum tapped on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry, it's probably an emergency."
Oh, bless her.
And I realised that there's so many elements there, that there's two sides of the journey. And both are a living experience, but sometimes there's a misgap in the communication and understanding. And if you can kind of feel that little kind of tiny gap in,
yes,
suddenly create a whole different experience. And all of a sudden, I saw my mum didn't mind waiting because she understood what was happening.
Exactly.
How does that translate for you? Like how can we kind of bridge that like communication element between the two sides?
I think the really big key is to take time each month to walk through each of those steps and imagine yourself like in clients' shoes, because I guess one of the it's human nature, isn't it? If we are always walking into the clinic through the back door because it's the staff entrance, or we are simply sending people out of the consult room and we don't get to experience that bit at reception, or as a receptionist we're having the same conversation like over and over and over again, and it becomes very automatic. We don't think too deeply about it, but just pressing pause every now and then and experiencing it from the client's perspective and thinking, okay, it's quite common that the phone rings when I've got somebody stood in front of me. I pick up the phone because I know that the person at the end of the phone can't see that I'm busy, and I want to get, I want to deal with them quickly because, as you say, it could be an emergency. But if we just pause that for a moment and go, but how does the person on the other side of the table see that, view that, feel about that? Then the likelihood is that we'd pick up on the fact that actually they won't know that it could be an emergency. They might not have even thought about that. All they know is that they're walking towards us. They're about to open their mouth and speak to us, and we go, "Good morning," and pick up the phone. So just taking that moment of pause to step into their shoes is something that can be, it sounds so obvious and so simple, but it's something that we don't often get time for in our day-to-day lives unless we actually carve out time and make time to do it. But the little insights that we can glean can change things dramatically, because then the person with that knowledge and with that insight can think, right, phone's ringing, someone stood in front of me, I'm going to take a moment to say, "I'm really sorry, do you mind if I answer this? It could be an emergency." Off they go. They've explained it, they've bridged that gap. But if they hadn't thought about how that client would be feeling first, then they might not say that, might not do that. So I think, it's all about stepping into the client's shoes and not just thinking about the process of like, how can I make this run smoothly, but what might they be feeling, and therefore what might they need from me to make that better.
Yeah, and I think there is often a desire on both sides to appease the other person, but it's kind of lost in that moment, where you've got maybe a client that sees somebody answer the phone to them and feels that that's something rude, but then their reaction is an eye roll, which then the person on reception sees as like a really rude customer, and all of a sudden that desire to actually want to bond is disrupted. So
completely.
So I guess it's the transparency and communication is what's key, both within your team but also with your clients, and I guess just being honest in the way that you communicate and not trying to hide stuff behind the curtain, Joe, like thinking that they don't need to know what this call is about.
Exactly. And I think ultimately it comes down to how we train teams as well. I think that's really, really key. Ultimately, we're in a service industry, and veterinary medicine is our product. But what we're doing really is serving clients day in, day out. That's what we're in the business of doing. And in any service industry, it's really important that all the people involved in delivering that experience are all trained to see things from the client's perspective, to step into their shoes regularly and to preempt what they might be thinking or feeling so that they can communicate well, and encouraging teams to make sure that if they have got phones on the front desk, that they are trained in ways to communicate with the client stood in front of them and the clients on the phone, to make sure that the experience is good for both. I mean, ultimately, in an ideal world, my view would be, let's take the phones off the front desk so the people that are sat there can actually deal with the people in front of them, because that should be the core part of their job. And then the people on the phones don't have to be put on hold while you're dealing with a client in front of you. So it works on both levels, really. But if that's not a possibility, then let's train people so that they can, do the best, be the best, and give the best client experience at the time.
Yeah, to be honest, this was where the route to Tom's thinking around PetSat came. I think I remember him talking to us openly about the way that he felt with that. Like you say, it's a service industry, isn't it? You're providing a service, and the need and the desire for that service is increasing. And as it increases, you suddenly become this business that's just churning people in and out.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying, like, it can't be that we're just churning these 12-minute consultations out, because so many people need to be served and we don't have the time to give them more than 12 minutes. But I guess it is like you say, looking holistically at the bigger experience, where can we make those small shifts?
Yeah.
And I agree with you that when it comes to, I think it's a very kind of old school concept where you have reception as being this physical thing where you have a telephone, there's somebody sat on the desk. I think I agree with you that it makes a huge difference when you step into a waiting room and there's somebody there waiting to acknowledge you, kind of welcome you into the practice. And that's where their sole focus is. Because I know myself as a mum, both for my children and for my animals, I'm very nervous. And especially when it comes to a professional setting and kind of asking for help or making sure that I get all the information. Even for me, it's quite stressful. And I know with the children and even with Baloo, that stress can easily be transferred into there. So just having somebody that could just make eye contact with you and tell you to take a seat, it makes a big difference. Whereas if you've got a lot of activity going on, the experience can feel quite chaotic.
Yeah, completely. I utterly agree. And I think because that experience of clinic life is so normal for many of us, we can overlook how much emotion, how much stress, how much anxiety is tied up with just getting the pet there. And, there's a lot that we can do also in the pre-appointment stage, at that point where they're online booking, we've got days between that moment where they've booked and they actually arrive for their appointment. We've got so much opportunity to think about what might the client be feeling, how anxious could they be, how difficult might they find it to get the cat in the carrier and into the car, and so on. What could we do? What could we share with them? How can we make that easier for them? And so we've got an opportunity to dial up the client experience like way before they even walk through the door, and to help them feel calmer, more confident, more comfortable as they arrive through that door as well, which I think is really important.
Yeah, it's all the elements that occur in the moments before you even hit the doorstep of the clinic. I know for Baloo, we have big issues with her because she's incontinent. So even just from getting out of the apartment door, down the stairs and into the car, she will have wet herself. And then you've got to go get them up, clean it up, because if my neighbours find it, that's going to be chaotic. And
more
then
drama.
the kids are running around. You're like, please don't step in it. So before you even go in the car, you can feel like your heart rate going. Right. And even the moments to get you there, Joe, the fact that you need to coordinate everybody to make sure. I'm a single mum, so if I go to the vets, I need to take the kids with me, and Baloo, as mental as she can be, she's far more well behaved than the two children. So there's a lot, I guess, that goes.
Definitely. Children is another area where we can help out so much, because as you've described, it can be so stressful having no choice but to take your children into an appointment with you. And And it can be made worse if you're sat in a waiting room where you feel like everyone around you is like, oh, why have they brought their kids? This is not a place for children, isn't it? Whereas if you can feel welcomed, if you can feel like the person on reception or the team around you have noticed that this might be a more stressful experience for you because you've got the stress of your pet being there and you're trying to manage your children at the same time, and actually step in with, you know, something to distract the children with, something to occupy them with, something just to bring them a little bit of joy. You know, that's a moment where we can massively dial up the client experience, because I'm sure for you it would be a very different experience if you felt like, oh, thank God I'm going to the vets, but when I get there with the kids, even though I'll be feeling a bit chaotic, I know that at that moment they will take care of me and they will help me with them. And that in itself, like, completely changes the client experience.
Yeah, our local vets here have a play station, so it's like a play area where it's just a table with, like, you know, small chairs and colouring equipment for the kids. And for me, the difference that it makes is huge, because previously where I've gone to clinics where they don't have that, while I'm in the consultation, I'm constantly looking, and I've got, the doctor will be telling me stuff that I need to do, and I'm trying to make a mental note of what they're saying. And
while you're like, don't touch that. No.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of, like, you know, all over the place. So is Blue okay? And the kids are okay. Where are the kids? You know, what are they doing? So just,
what did you say? I can't hear anything that's going on because I'm worrying about them. I totally, yeah.
Exactly. But it makes a huge difference, because I know for at least 5 minutes solid, they will colour. And I've got this window of time where I can focus on Blue and what needs to be done. Do you have any examples of teams that you've worked with where the kind of, you've seen like an immediate transformation in the small changes that have been made?
Yeah, there's one clinic that I work with quite a bit, who have invested a lot of time in overhauling their reception and their waiting room experience, and they completely got rid of phones from their front desk, which is, you know, a point that we've mentioned already, but that was a game changer, because it meant then when the client walks in, you know, there's no distractions, there's no phone ringing, they're able to give the clients 100% of their time. And they went through a lot of team training to make sure that clients were greeted personally, like literally within seconds of walking through the door. And they actually have somebody who is placed right by the door just to welcome people as they come in. And that is a game changer. Like the fact that people get this kind of personal welcome as they come in, they get on the floor, meet the pet, say hi. Really, really important, because often we can walk in, stand around, looking around, waiting, and it sounds like a really small change, but the dial up in their client satisfaction overall, and the feedback from vets and nurses who are running the consults, it's just like so good. You know, their client satisfaction went up, like massive level up. But in terms of what then went on in the consult room, you wouldn't necessarily think that these two things are going to be linked. But in the consult room, you now have clients who are feeling good about their whole experience before they even walk in. And all of a sudden, it's getting easier to encourage them to take recommendations that are in the pet's best interests. And so you get this kind of virtuous cycle where the clients had a lovely experience. They are feeling, you know, just nice about the whole thing. And then as they walk through the door and they're feeling more trusting, they're feeling more inclined to say yes, simply because they're in this positive mindset. So I think, you know, focusing on what those first few moments are when people walk through the door, that I've seen huge impacts in clinics.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think the same for I think from my own experience, the when I go to our vets now, I think I'm less, previously where my mindset would be I need to rush in and rush out. Just the fact that I feel the children are welcomed, it makes the process of me going through the clinic and out again not just smoother, but I'm more in tune to what they've got. So we often stop now at the shop that the clinic has and we purchase something. Whereas I think previously, if I had gone somewhere that had a shop, wasn't welcoming towards the children, I would have seen the shop as another obstacle, you know, to navigate through with the dog and with the kids. And I'd be thinking, oh my God, they're going to touch everything.
Out of here.
I need to leave.
Yeah.
Whereas that instant welcome where the kids have been sat down and entertained means that after the consultation, I mean, in the consultation, I'm taking everything in. and I'm happy to be there. I come out, and then we normally have a look through, and we normally buy a treat for Blue, and it's something that kids enjoy doing as well. So it's not, like you say, it's not just those moments before, it's the whole process where you're kind of opening people up to just so many other elements.
Feel right. So the thing is that as humans, right, we're good at knowing that we feel something positive, but we're not good at knowing why we feel that way. And so we'll rationalize it, but we often label it with the wrong thing. So when we have that nice experience, we walk in, we're greeted, it looks nice, it smells nice. They, say something nice about our pet who we love dearly, massive bonding moment. We have this positive feeling. And instead of thinking, oh, that was nice, I feel nice about this because that was nice, we tend to just start to think things like, this place is great. I've got a good feeling about this vet practice. I trust them. They seem really credible. They're very, very knowledgeable. I want to believe what I'm hearing. They must be right. They're correct. And so this creates this sort of virtuous cycle of positive labels that people are putting onto the team. And it means that when we walk into that consult room and we're hit with a recommendation or some options, and hopefully a clear recommendation alongside it, then we're much more likely to think, great, yeah, sounds like a good idea. We're going to feel instinctively like it's a good idea. Whereas if we have the opposite feeling, we arrive in the car park and there's rubbish everywhere, weeds everywhere, the sign looks like it was last painted in the 1970s, and we will open the door, the waiting room's really loud, smells, someone's on the phone, like the horrible experience, then we were starting to stack up the not sure about this place vibes. And so then we start labeling it with things like, I'm not sure I believe this person. I don't trust them. They don't seem credible. And then we're in that negative state when we come to make decisions. So we can either have a virtuous cycle or the complete opposite. Yeah. But it's really important that we pay attention to those small things. And I think it's quite easy when we're in the busy world of vet practice to think that the things that drive clients' decision making, things that help them choose the right things for the pets, are the big things that happen, those moments where we make a recommendation. Yes, it's important, of course, but the moments in the consult where we're building up to it, it's very easy to forget or to not realize how important the smell of the waiting room, the greeting that you get as you walk through the door, how all of those things will stack up to make that important stuff happen more easily. It's really key. I think the other thing that I see being done really well in some practices is empowering those reception teams to make gestures and to make judgment calls on things which will dial up the client experience.
Yeah, I agree.
So, if that means giving a small toy away to a client, they're empowered to do that. I've been to one practice where they have a budget available for this, and so they're able to give treats, give toys, give something for the kids, really small things, none of which are expensive. They don't do it all the time, but they pick moments where they feel like it's going to have a really big impact on the client. Such a powerful way to bond people. Like, what an experience. How lovely is that, to think of those little gestures that are just going to bring people joy.
Yeah.
And that's something that can have a dramatic impact on.
They know as well. Your reception team, they're in the thick of it. They know, and they're not just experienced. They tend to be the kind of people that do well and thrive well in those environments, are very empathetic and kind of can feel and understand the energy of the people that they're dealing with. I think I always love it when I hear clinical team members talking about how they will help out on reception if it's needed, but they're not any good at it, and they trust that the reception team are the ones to do it. These small changes that you're talking about that can be made, do you think that they are as easily replicated for smaller teams as they would be able to be facilitated by say bigger groups?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, in some ways, the smaller the team, the easier it is, because the fewer people you need to get on board and train. So yeah, absolutely. And none of these things really require necessarily huge amounts of resources, huge amounts of time investment. Of course, if you're training teams, that involves some time input, but it's going to be paid back in dividends, later on as the client experience improves. But a lot of the changes really, might involve just, I walk in through the front door this time instead of the back door and have a look at it through the client's eyes. Oh, that needs cleaning. The doorknob needs a wipe. The window needs a bit of a wipe. These are things that can be done in seconds, minutes, but can really make a difference to how the client feels. So, of course, there's a whole range of different things. Some of them are really small and some of them might be bigger, like engaging in team training. But ultimately, anything that you can do to dial up that client experience is going to have a dramatic impact on clinical outcomes. And I think that in itself makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, and you're talking about the empowerment of the reception teams. I guess there's a huge element that maybe is lost when it comes to listening. Listening to what your reception team says, as well as your client feedback, but listening to what they feel that there would be a good step change for that introduction into the clinic, because they are well attuned to what needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Reception teams are, at the coalface, really, aren't they? They're in the thick of it, dealing with clients day in, day out. And so that experience is golden, that insight into what clients are feeding back about their experience currently, what they notice. Even it might not be stuff that's fed back, but they might just notice where interactions start to stall a little bit, and therefore, what can we do to improve on them? And those things will be slightly different across different practices, where you've got a different environment, different building, different setup, and different client bases. So listening to teams and really taking on board what they're experiencing, again, so important, just really important.
And with regard to the client journey, I think often we think about it being from the moment they step through the door to finish the consultation and they've made their payment. But how much further past that do you feel we should be looking into the full journey? Like, what should the follow-up be with regards to clients and pets once they leave the clinic?
Well, my view is that there should always be some kind of follow-up. Always, the experience should never end with that kind of moment of payment and departure. And actually, I would argue that the other thing about the end of the experience is that moment of payment should probably be moved. Otherwise, it's right at the end of the experience, which is not great from a client experience perspective. But I think some kind of follow-up is really key, whether that be, and what that follow-up looks like will change depending on the scenario and the situation and the client involved and what's going on with the pet. But, whether that's a phone call, an email, a follow-up appointment, there needs to be some kind of plan in place. Whether that be, we'll see you again next week, here's your appointment, it's all booked in, or whether it's, I'm going to give you a call tomorrow and see how you're getting on, or I'll pop you an email with all of this information in it. You can come back to me at any point with any questions you've got. There needs to be some kind of follow-up that helps the client in some way. So it needs to be personalized. Doesn't mean it can't be automated, of course, but it needs to be personalized to them, to their pet situation, so that it feels completely relevant to them. Otherwise we lose the value in it. But something that helps them move on to the next stage that's appropriate for them and their pet situation is an absolute critical part of the journey.
And so what could a practice do to take routine visits from a client and turn them into long-term loyalty? Like, how do we bridge those little elements after the visit to create like a full continuous cycle?
Well, I think converting somebody from a single appointment through to long-term loyalty is about much more than what happens just after the consult. It's about like literally everything that happens from before they even book their first appointment all the way through. But I think just making sure we keep up some kind of engagement with them after that consult's really key. So it's very difficult to be specific because it would be so situation dependent. But for example, if when they come in, we notice that they maybe their dog needs a dental, and we talk to them about it at the time, and they're like, yeah, not right now. Okay, well, there's some kind of follow-up plan that needs to be put in place. So that could be, we'll book another appointment for another fortnight's time. Perhaps they needed to talk to their partner about it. That could also be, we're going to follow up with some information to so that next time you come in, you're armed with all of the information that you need. I think some kind of follow-up plan, whether that be regular education, whether that be specific appointment follow-up for their situation. I just think in general, an observation I have across veterinary practices is that the communication tends to be really good when they are face-to-face. Sometimes it starts to fall down when the client has left the building. I often talk to people about the challenges of getting people to come in and book in for dentals. And I talk about how there's, the theory about 7 touch points, about how you need 7 touch points to change people's behavior. People would be like, oh, that's 7 consults. How am I ever going to get through 7 consults? But, those touch points can come in all sorts of other different ways. Maybe you send them a blog article, or you send them some information, or there's a phone call follow up at a particular point. And all of these things can stack up to give those 7 touch points. So I think every client that comes in, even if they've just come in for 1 consult, there should be some kind of information flow that they fall into that's ideally really relevant to the problem they came in with, or relevant to the life stage, or relevant to what you're expecting they're going to need in 6 months' time, and helps to build up towards it. But there should be some kind of information flow, email series, text message, some kind of flow that they fall into, which just helps you have that regular touch points, so that they're kind of being nudged in the right direction for the decisions that they're going to need to make for their pet in 6 months, 3 months, a year, whatever.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, and there are elements also in the waiting room, that can also be the touch points that aren't human led.
Exactly.
Videos, posters, the educational material that you might even have on the table for people to read. They're all slight nudges, aren't they? Yeah.
And I think video is something that's used by some practices really well, but it's also underused quite a lot. I think, in that if somebody's booking an appointment, sending them a video about what to expect. Maybe there's a little walking tour of the waiting area and where they're going to arrive, where they should park, and all that kind of stuff. Or perhaps as a follow-up to a consult, instead of there being a phone call or an email, it could just be a quick video that's recorded and sent their way. That dials up the kind of the personal connection so much, and we're all so used to consuming short videos now in our everyday lives. We do it all the time, so things like that can have a big impact, and it feels like the kind of customer experience we're used to getting elsewhere. And I think that's really important, that we can't forget that the people we're seeing as clients are consumers everywhere else in the rest of their lives, and they're experiencing this amazing experience in other industries with other consumer experiences that they're having. And ultimately veterinary medicine is a consumer experience, and therefore we need to be thinking about how can we give them the same kind of exceptional access to information and experience that they're getting elsewhere in their lives. Things like short video snippets, brilliant for that. Absolutely brilliant.
Agreed. And especially for me, I think in the way that I learn stuff and I retain information, it tends to be a better format for me, and also makes me feel less anxious because I have something to refer to, rather than it's a word or spoken.
And it really helps also when they're sharing information with other people when they get home. Being able to sit and watch a short video enables somebody to get it so much more than read it. And I think, like you say, all of us consume information and learn in different ways, but I think video it covers so many of those bases, doesn't it? Because you get the visual, you get the auditory. It's somehow a lot more memorable than a leaflet or a list of notes. And it's harder for it to be misconstrued as well, because you're actually seeing the whole experience. Whereas a lot of the leaflets and things that we send people home with, they're all good, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting we shouldn't give people written stuff as well, but often people won't read them at all.
I can't scrunch a video up and shove it into the bottom of my handbag.
Exactly.
So with all of your caps on, so as a vet, as a marketer, as a pet owner, what's your opinion on elements such as loyalty and wellness plans? Because I guess these all kind of feed into that cycle and the overall experience, the way that you bond your clients to clinic.
So I think loyalty and wellness plans are critical for client experience on lots of levels. I think it enables us from a pricing perspective and the kind of the feelings that people have about paying for their healthcare, the veterinary healthcare. It enables us to slightly remove the experience from the paying for it, which is great from a client experience perspective. It's a direct debit happening in the background. Once it's been set up, it's sort of almost without any conscious input from the client at all, lack of awareness. I mean, they're obviously aware of it, but on a month by month basis, it just happens.
Yeah.
And then they are experiencing this great client experience, and they're not connecting it psychologically to the payment that they're making. So it massively reduces the pain of payment for veterinary healthcare. I think the other thing that I see is happening more and more now is plans that include unlimited consults. And that, I think, is a really great development from a client experience perspective, because it just completely removes that barrier to entry. It stops people thinking, oh, I'll just wait. I'll just see if it gets better before I take him in, because there's no reason to wait. I've already paid for the consult. Let's just go in and have that consult. And I'm hearing from practices that are doing that they're seeing clients earlier, which means obviously from the patient's perspective, that's a win. But they're also seeing people more often as well. And so there's so many more opportunities to hit those 7 touch points to help guide people towards things that are in the patient's best interest, taking up things like dentals and all the other great things that we know are really important for the pet's health. And you've got a client that's more bonded. The more they see people, the more familiar they get with the practice and with the team, the more they will feel bonded and like them. It's called the mere exposure effect in psychology. So the more exposure we have to people and to things, the more we tend to feel that we're bonded to them and that we like them. And that's really important, obviously, from a loyalty perspective. So we want to get clients through the door early, because that's good for patients. It's good for the practice, but it's also good for the patient. But we want them to come in, more often, more frequently. We want them to feel bonded and want to have that frequent interaction with them. So yeah, that's a very long, wittery way of saying that I think that loyalty programs are an absolutely essential part of the mix.
And we're living in a world that is kind of it is formatted via subscriptions. So
Exactly.
for me, even when it comes to finances, I find it far easier to be able to review my subscriptions than have to try and break down and work out where different payments have gone through. And I think me and the kids even I can't remember if it was with Prime or with Netflix, but we did a trial, I think, in COVID, where we tested subscription versus pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm.
What we found was, although actually it was cheaper to pay-per-view, I think it was something like 99p.
Yeah.
We worked out that I think our monthly subscription was like $14.99, and we didn't actually watch more than 15 movies.
Yeah.
It was irritating to have to go through that process of paying each time that we watched it. And often we decided not to watch a movie because we associated money towards it. Whereas,
exactly.
When you pay your subscription, you just watch whenever you want to watch. And I think that now, I mean, that's how I do my my nails is on subscription. When I go to the beauticians and have my nails and my hair done, that's a subscription. TV, music, it is just what we are primed to
it's
do.
Normal, isn't it? Yeah, it just feels like it's quite a standard way of doing things. And because we do so many things on subscription now, having to budget for stuff that's ad hoc feels quite challenging in lots of ways, because there's that sense of sort of unpredictability about it. And will the dog break essentially at the point where the boiler also breaks and my car's broken and all this other stuff happens? You're like, oh. Whereas if you've got that security of knowing, even if not everything is obviously, you'd be pushing it to have a health, they do exist, but you'd be pushing it in a lot of practices to have a health plan that covers everything. But even if it's just that consult fee that's removed from the mix, it's such a big difference for people psychologically, because it's taken care of. It means that when they do come to pay their bill, it's going to be smaller because there's that bit removed from it.
Yeah.
And it just encourages people to go for it and to come and seek veterinary advice earlier, which I just think, we should be trying to lower the barriers to entry, trying to encourage people in to get access to good healthcare at an earlier stage and more frequently. I just think that's going to be good for everybody.
Yeah, it's the balance, isn't it, between efficiency and empathy, I guess. What would be, your parting advice? What would be the one, or I guess the first key step for people to start opening up and thinking about aspects like the client journey and looking at things that they can do as simple, easy changes to begin kind of cultivating a new pathway, I guess, in and out of their clinic?
Well, I think one of the key things that I would encourage clinics to do is to look at how the technology that they use can help them to streamline some of these processes and make it easier for them to deliver without taking up loads of team resources. And that can be done in lots of ways, whether it's to do with, having an online booking set up, whether it's to do with having an ability to send short clips of videos to clients. That can be quite simple to set up and have a massive impact on the client experience very, very quickly. So I think that's one thing. And the other thing I would say is just take 20 minutes every month just to drive into your car park, through the gate that the clients drive into, walk through the door that they walk through, walk from the waiting area to the consult room and back, and just go to the toilet, in the toilet that the clients will use, and just take that moment to think, how does it make me feel? How would it make a client feel if they're seeing this for the first time with fresh eyes? Really powerful, very simple to do, but it might just allow you to pick up on the odd thing where you think, actually, that could do with a tidy up, that could do with a freshen up, we could do with just tweaking that process a little bit.
Yeah, it makes sense. I when I worked in retail, stuff like this is just a given. It's just what you do, and you don't really think when it comes to veterinary that actually, your front window, your reception is exactly the same as the experience that people go through when they step into a shop, and what they're used to experiencing as well.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you, Becki. Thank you so much for coming. Where can people find you? So where can people get a hold of you to be able to dig deeper into all of these elements that we've discussed today, and to use your services that you now offer with Inside Minds?
Oh, thank you for even suggesting that, Naomi. So my website is inside-minds.com. That's probably the best place to go to find out a bit more. Or I'm active on LinkedIn as well, so you can always find me there.
And you're on the speaker circuit. Are there any up and coming events that you're going to be attending, or that people can hear talks from you at?
Yeah, I'm going to be at the Utrecht Vet event in June, so that's my next one coming up, and then I'm also going to be at London Vet Show in the autumn too.
Awesome! I can't believe we're halfway through the year. We've already started prep for London Vet Show, and I feel like we only just wrapped it. But yeah, scary. It's scary. 26. It's been wonderful speaking to you. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, not at all. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here, Naomi. Thank you. Together.
Introducing PetSap Wellness Plans. With a tap of a button, you can say hello to a 35% uplift in usage from your clients. In just 4 easy steps, your patients could be benefiting from your new PetSap Wellness Plan. Say goodbye to paper forms and unnecessary phone calls. Growing your wellness plan usage is now at the tip of your fingers. And you will also benefit from improving your clients' lifetime value through better retention. PetSap wellness plans by the numbers. 35% uplift in plan adoption. Get set up in minutes and even faster for your clients. And we don't charge any setup or renewal fees. It's time to start transforming your practice with veterinary's leading wellness plan provider, PetSap. Speak to a member of the pack to get started now.